The galaxy was cold, not just in temperature, but in the way people lived, ruled, and survived. Wars between species had carved a deep silence in space, especially around the planet Zelari. Their floating royal court hung in orbit like a jewel shimmering. White towers and long glass bridges that circled the entire station. It was a place of order, logic, and strict emotion control. Into this cold world stepped a human diplomat, Jace Rowan. He didn't wear a royal robe or polished metals like the others. Instead, he wore a simple dark jacket, thick boots, and a quiet confidence. His eyes moved slowly, studying everything. He didn't smile much, but he also didn't flinch. Humans were known to be too emotional, too warm, too unpredictable. Why, he was sent to prove that humanity could be something more. As Jace walked through the giant glass corridors, alien nobles watched him like he was an odd creature from a zoo. The guards stood motionless in sleek armor, their weapons not drawn, but always ready. Everyone in the royal court moved with grace, like dancers on ice. No laughter, no side whispers, just quiet calculation. He was led to the grand dining hall, where the real stage was set. The hall floated above the planet's surface, with transparent floors and ceilings that showed the stars above and the world. Below, massive light crystals hummed gently. The long silver table was filled with strange, glowing dishes, none of which Jace could identify, and at the head of the table sat her Princess Tiali. She was beautiful in a way that didn't belong to Earth. Her silver-blue skin seemed to glow faintly, and her eyes were like polished glass, no warmth, just sharp light. Her hair was pulled back with golden pins, her clothes wrapped tight with symbols of rank and power. But it was her stillness that made her stand out. She didn't blink much. She didn't smile. She barely moved, as if emotion was a disease she had long cured. She didn't stand when Jace arrived. She didn't even nod, but she did speak. "You are the human?" she asked, voice clear and smooth like ice melting. Jace gave a slight bow. "Jace Rowan, diplomatic envoy. I come in peace." That made a few alien nobles raise their eyebrows, but Tiale only leaned back in her seat. "Humans always say that. Yet you come with hearts on your sleeves, emotions in your voices, and strange customs." She tilted her head. Like touching lips in public, some nobles chuckled softly, an unusual sound in the court. Jace smirked. "We call it a kiss. It's how we show affection." Tial's expression didn't change. Primitive contact. It's disgusting, frankly. "We bond through neural link. Pure thought, no messy skin to skin." Another noble added, "It's like animals sniffing each other." The room laughed louder. This time Jace simply nodded, not insulted. "Maybe, but some animals love better than kings." The table went quiet again. Tiali narrowed her eyes. "And do you think this affection makes you stronger?" "Think it makes us human." That night, after the cold dinner ended, Jace walked alone through the outer ring of the palace. He couldn't sleep. The stars outside the glass corridors were too loud. He paused near a small garden, one of the few places that had real plant life. Strange glowing vines climbed crystal walls, and soft blue petals pulsed with light. Then he heard the sound metal crashing, footsteps running, voices shouted in the Zelari language. Something was wrong. Jace ran toward the sound. When he turned a corner near the east spire, he saw two guards down, motionless, and a shadowy figure darting through a side hallway with a blade in hand. He didn't stop to think. He sprinted, caught the attacker off guard, and tackled him into a wall. The blade skidded across the floor. Jace wrestled him until reinforcements arrived and pulled the attacker away. The guards grabbed Jace too, but then they saw her, Princess Tial. She stood a few feet away, her robe torn, one shoulder bleeding from a shallow cut. She hadn't screamed or even moved, just stared. Her eyes locked onto Jace's human, who had thrown himself into danger for her. The guards tried to move her away, but she raised one hand, stopping them. Then she walked toward Jace. The room was silent except for the sound of distant alarms. She looked at him closely. His face was bruised. There was blood on his cheek, yet he smiled just a little. "You all right?" he asked softly. She didn't answer. Her eyes dropped not to the wound or the blade, but to his lips, just for a second. She looked confused. Her mind was trained, controlled. But something inside her sparked, something she couldn't name. Jace noticed. He tilted his head. You still think kissing is primitive? She snapped out of it quickly. Her voice was sharper now. You do not kiss, human. He chuckled, wiping blood from his brow. Then you've never been kissed, right? She stared at him like he had spoken in some forbidden language. That night, long after she left, she couldn't stop thinking about that moment. Not the attack, not the blade, just his face, and the strange warmth that had lingered when their eyes met. The question had entered her perfect mind. What does a kiss really feel like? And she wasn't sure if she wanted to find out. Tor feared that she already did. Princess Tiali sat alone in the observatory chamber, a circular glass room high above the rest of the floating court. From there, she could see the stars in every direction, thousands of them, silent and cold, just like her people. Her hands rested flat on the smooth crystal table. Her skin should have been calm. Her thoughts should have been balanced. Ever since that night, ever since the human touched her, something had changed. She couldn't stop thinking about the way he looked at her, not with fear or calculation, not like the nobles or the hive elders who saw her as a tool. Jace had looked at her like she was real, like she was someone. And his lips, those human lips soft, stained with blood and courage, had burned into her mind. Tiali's pulse increased again. She blinked hard. No, that wasn't right. Emotions led to disorder. Her mental link was already weakening. The hive counselors would soon notice. But the more she tried to push the thought away, the stronger it came back. She stood, walked across the room, and accessed the central archive. A screen rose from the floor, flickering with alien symbols. She typed in an access code and searched for human bonding behavior. Thousands of reports came up. Most were clinical. Some were deeply judgmental. But one showed archived footage. From an Earth diplomatic broadcast, a wedding she watched silently, a human couple stood before a crowd. They said words of promise. Then they leaned in and touched lips. Not just a brush, a full, firm connection. The woman smiled through tears. The man whispered something and touched her cheek, and the crowd cheered. Teal leaned forward. Head tilted slightly. She didn't know what it was that gripped her, but her hands trembled. She reached to pause the screen, then brought her fingers to her own lips. The surface was soft, alien pale. But the gesture left her stunned. Why had the princess of the Zelari just imitated a human kiss? Behind her, the door chimed. She quickly turned off the screen. It was Jace. He stood at the entrance, bruises healing, hands in pockets. No armor, no guard, just his presence. I was told you wanted to speak, he said. She nodded slowly. Come in. He entered with careful steps, his boots quiet on the polished floor. Noticed how different she looked tonight. Her robe wasn't the formal one, her hair wasn't pinned, and her expression wasn't blank. Tiale gestured to the side bench. I've reviewed your customs. Jace raised an eyebrow, sitting down. Which ones? We have a lot of strange ones. She hesitated, kissing specifically. He blinked, then gave a slow nod. I figured that dinner table comment might have stuck with you. Why do you do it? She asked bluntly. What function does it serve? It seems inefficient. Jace smiled, leaning back. It's not about function. It's about feeling. You connect. You feel safe, wanted. It's a moment where words don't matter. Tiali narrowed her eyes. We bond through neural merge. It's far more efficient. We share thoughts instantly. Why need lips? 'Cause sometimes sharing thoughts isn't enough, Jace said gently. Sometimes people need to feel the connection. There was a long silence. The stars continued to shine outside, but something heavier hung between them. She stood suddenly, walking closer. Her posture was still proud, but her voice softened. Show me what it means. Not the kiss. Just the meaning. Jace looked up at her. Are you sure? I need to understand, she said. But her voice trembled at the end. He stood, stepping closer, careful not to rush her. All right, close your eyes. She hesitated, then obeyed. It was the first time in her life that she had closed her eyes in the presence of someone who wasn't family or guard. It made her feel... exposed. Jace reached out slowly and placed his palm gently on her cheek. The contact made her stiffen, but he didn't move. This, he said quietly, is how we say, I see you, not just with eyes, with heart. This says, you matter. Tiao's breath caught. Then he placed his other hand over hers, cool, trembling fingers wrapped in his warmth. And this, he continued, says, you're not alone. She opened her eyes. Their faces were close now. Too close. She took a shaky breath. Why are you doing this? Because you asked, he said, holding her gaze. And maybe because I want to. A voice crackled from the intercom. Princess, your presence is required in the Hall of Harmony. Urgent matter. She stepped back, walls rising again. I must go. But before she turned away, she said, return tomorrow. There's more I wish to understand. Jace nodded once. Be here. As she left, her hand brushed her own cheek, the same spot where his hand had been. The warmth lingered. The hive inside her mind buzzed with warning signals. Emotional contamination. Neural drift, cognitive shift, but she silenced them. She didn't want the feeling to go away, and deep inside, something ancient and forgotten stirred in her alien heart. Asterisk, the next morning. The royal court was unusually tense. The corridors buzzed with quiet urgency. Guards doubled at entry points. Protocol. Drones flew overhead, scanning everything for potential threats. On the surface, things appeared calm, but whispers among the nobles told a different story. Some claimed the hive had detected irregularities in Princess Tieli's neural link. Others said she had spent too much time alone with the human, Jace. Noticed it too when he arrived at the palace's lower entrance. His usual escort was replaced by a silent guard with a blank visor. No conversation, no polite greeting, just a nod and a wave to follow. But Jace had already learned one thing about the Zalari when they went silent. It usually meant something important was happening beneath the surface. He was taken not to a meeting chamber this time, but to a garden. It wasn't large. It's maybe the size of a human apartment. But it was carefully crafted, floating trees with translucent leaves. Strange blooming vines that moved slowly in reaction to light and glowing. Water that pulsed in rhythm with ambient energy, and in the center of it all stood her Princess Tiali. She was different again today. No crown, no guards. Her robe was soft, flowing like water around her. Her back was to him, but he could tell from the tension in her shoulders she was nervous. When she turned around, he saw something even rarer than silence in the Zalari palace. Doubt. She didn't hide it from him. I chose this place, she said, her voice softer than before, because it is the only one without listening walls. Jace glanced up. No cameras, no drones. Just them and the odd, almost dreamlike garden. He smiled a little. What are we hiding from? My people, she said without flinching. Maybe myself. She walked toward a low bench and gestured for him to sit. He did. For a moment, neither spoke. The alien plants rustled quietly with every slight movement. Then she said, when you touched me yesterday, I felt something I cannot name. He didn't interrupt. And last night, I dreamed. Her fingers tightened slightly. In the dream, we stood together on Earth. I had no title, you had no role. And you kissed me. I woke up with heat in my chest. My link to the hive faltered. Jace leaned forward slowly. Do you want to sever that link? TL looked at him sharply. That would be treason. But do you want to? She didn't answer right away. Her eyes dropped to the ground, and for once she looked human, conflicted, heavy. My entire life, I was trained not to feel. Emotion was considered chaos. But now, it's not chaos I fear. Silence. Without feeling, what's the point of peace? Of survival? Jay stood and walked toward her slowly, as if approaching a wild animal unsure if it wanted to flee or fight. He stopped inches from her. "You asked me to show you meaning?" He said, "Let me show you something else." Her chin lifted slightly. "Breath-catching? You will kiss me?" "No," he said. "Not yet." "Something else." He reached out and gently tucked a loose strand of her hair behind her ear. It was simple, ordinary by human standards. But for Tiel, it was revolutionary. No. One in the Zellery court touched her face. No one showed that kind of closeness. And no one ever did it without permission, without ritual. The moment his fingers brushed her skin, her body froze but her eyes fluttered closed, then dashed panic. A sudden screech erupted from behind the trees. The garden doors burst open. 4 guards charged in, weapons raised. A high-pitched tone blared through the plants, making them shrink and curl. "Step away from the princess." One shouted. Jay has raised both hands slowly. Tiali stood between him and the guards, breathing fast. "He didn't harm me," she shouted. He made contact. The lead guard snapped. "Unauthorized bonding. That is a breach of interspecies protocol." Jace tried to speak, but another guard stepped forward, weapon aimed. He touched her face. "That is the gesture of submission among the old Zelaria ritual bonding." Tiel's eyes widened. "What?" she whispered. The hive inside her, always buzzing like a soft hum, suddenly roared to life. Ancient fragments of knowledge downloaded into her brain. Hidden data, locked long ago, touching the face. Eye contact. Emotional breath sinking. Lip contact. Bonding rituals of the ancients. Banned after the neural ascension. She gasped. They weren't just being emotional. They were awakening something her people had buried long ago. The guards tried to move forward. Step aside. "Princess, the human is to be restrained and interrogated," she said sharply. "You will not harm him. He may have infected you," the guard replied, emotionally compromised. "You are no longer, I command you," she said, her voice rising with sudden strength, "to leave us." There was a pause. Then the guards slowly lowered their weapons and backed away. But not before sending a signal through their coms. Once they were gone, Tial stood silently. Jace broke the silence. "I didn't know touching your face meant that," she looked at him. "I didn't either. Until now." "What does it mean, then?" She swallowed hard. "That I am no longer just curious." She turned away, trembling. "I think I'm falling." For the first time, in a court that never allowed emotion, an alien princess felt the terrifying weight of longing, the silence in Princess. Dicha's private chamber was not peaceful. It was thick, heavy, loud in its stillness. She sat motionless. Before the hive mirror, its surface swirling with faint white lights that responded to her neural activity. Normally, the mirror would display balanced streams of data-clean patterns, reflecting her perfect alignment with the Zelari hive mind. But not tonight. The lights pulsed erratically. Distorted waves rippled across the mirror's surface. Emotional contamination, cognitive instability. The readings flashed red. Her breath hitched. She hadn't meant for this to happen. She had trained her whole life to be controlled, calm, aligned. Emotion was weakness. Bonding was danger. But ever since Jace touched her gently, deliberately, without fear, something inside her refused to obey. She couldn't forget the way. His hand brushed her face. Not just the touch, but the intent behind it. It had no command, no demand, no data transfer. Its presence. And it had shaken the foundations of everything she believed. A low voice emerged from the hive mirror, sharp and genderless. "Princess Tiali, you have deviated from optimal cognitive alignment." "I am aware," she whispered. "Your contact with the human has compromised neural integrity. Immediate recalibration is required." Her fists clenched. "I request more time." Silence. Then the mirror responded, colder than before. "Denied." The mirror's surface dissolved into sharp light, signaling a command. "Report to the Chamber of Mental Rebalancing." A a place where Zelari minds were purged of foreign influence. Achoo. Never been sent there before. Only criminals or defectors had. Tiali turned away. No, not yet. She needed to see him again. Meanwhile, Jace was locked in a stone-gray room within the lower levels of the palace. Not a cell exactly, but not a guest suite either. The air was cold. And the lighting dim, designed to unsettle. 2 guards stood at the entrance. No one spoke to him. No one told him what he was charged with. Sat alone with his thoughts. His mind kept replaying her eyes the way they softened when he touched her. The flicker of hesitation, the almost human confusion on her face. Had seen that same look on Earth, in war zones and hospitals. It was the look of someone on the edge of breaking free from something they didn't even know had caged them. And then there was that final sentence. She whispered, "I think I'm falling." He didn't know if she meant for him, or if she meant. Apart, the door slid open, not with authority, but urgency. Tiala entered, her robe hurriedly thrown over a simpler gown. No guards, no crown. Her skin glowed faintly, her breath uneven. He stood quickly. "Are you okay?" "No," she said. "But I don't care." Asterisk. She walked up to him, closer than before. Her hands shook at her sides. The hive wants to reset. "Me," she said. "They say I'm broken." "You're not," he replied instantly. "I feel things," she said. "It's not allowed. They'll wipe it. The thoughts, the dreams, even the memory of you." Jace's jaw tightened. "Then we don't let them." Her voice cracked. "You don't understand. They control everything. If I resist, they'll brand me unfit to rule. I'll be exiled, disconnected, alone." He stepped closer. "You won't be alone." Her eyes flicked to his, and then her hands reached forward, unsure. It's not like a command, but like a plea. She placed them gently on either side of his chest, over his heart. "What is this? Why does this feel... safe?" He slowly placed his own hand over hers because it is. Tial closed her eyes. "I'm scared." "Good," he said. "That means you're alive." Her breath shuddered. Then, without thinking, she leaned forward, not for a kiss, but to rest her forehead against his. Zelari did not do this. It was far too intimate, but her body moved before her brain could stop it. They stood that way for several seconds, then alarms blared. Unauthorized proximity detected. Sector breach. Tiali snapped back, eyes wild. "They found me." Jace grabbed her hand. "Come with me. We can't outrun them." He looked at her, firm. "Then we don't run. We stand. You want to feel? You want to live? Then don't. Hide it. Show them." She stared at him, trembling. "If I stand... I might lose everything." He nodded. "Or gain something real." For a moment, her fear melted. It's just a little. And then she nodded. She stepped away, straightened her robe, lifted her chin. "If they want to erase me," she said, "they'll have to do it while I'm awake." Jace smiled. "That's the bravest thing I've ever seen." They turned as the door opened again this time. A group of masked hive attendants filed in. Tiali stepped forward to meet them. Not as the obedient heir, but as a woman who had tasted freedom and wasn't willing to let it go without a fight. Asterisk, the chamber of rebalancing was buried in the deepest layer of the floating court. Far below the crystal domes and starlit gardens, no windows, no sky, just gray stone and humming machines that whispered cold threats. Princess Tiali stood in the center of a wide circular platform, surrounded by floating rings of glowing glyphs. Above her, the ceiling pulsed like a breathing wall, alive with hive algorithms. 10 elders, each with shrouded faces and glowing blue veins, sat in a crescent formation. She was not wearing royal robes now. They had stripped her of the crown, the silk, the signs of rule. Now she wore a plain, silver-gray bodysuit, meant for recalibration, tight, sterile, motionless. "The subject is mentally unstable," one elder announced flatly. "External emotional imprint detected." "She has been exposed to uncontrolled human interaction," said another. "Observed symptoms, erratic memory patterns, sensory imprints, dream hallucinations. They circled her like machines dressed. As people, Tiali said nothing. She stared ahead, jaw set, heart pounding. "The corrective procedure will begin," the lead elder said, lifting a control rod behind him. A narrow passage opened, revealing the rebalancer, a towering metal frame, humming with neural needles. It looked like a throne and a torture device combined. Jace had once described fear as a cold hand around the lungs now. She understood. Two attendants stepped forward to guide her, but she didn't move. "I refuse." "What?" the lead elder asked. "I refuse recalibration. You do not have the authority." "I am still heir to the throne," she snapped, louder now. I choose to feel." There was silence, followed by a low, rising hum in the chamber. The hive AI began scanning her vitals, displaying bursts of color across the room. One elder stood slowly. "You are no longer suitable to inherit the mind crown." "I don't want the mind crown," she said. "I want truth," the elder hissed. "You speak like the forgotten, like the ones who were purged." Tiali blinked. The forgotten. That word echoed in her skull like a stone dropped into a well. She remembered something. A sealed file. Hidden deep in the royal archives, long ago, there had been a rebel faction among the Zelari. Those who believed that emotions were not a sickness. That bonding through touch, lips, skin, closeness was sacred. They were artists, lovers, warriors, who embraced feeling as strength. The hive called them corrupted. But maybe they had simply been free before she could. "Speak again," one of the elders shouted. "Override her neural link. Begin forced recalibration." Tejal's skin lit up with blue lines as the hive tried to seize control of her mind. She dropped to one knee. The pain struck like fire across her skull. But then, a blast tore through the far door. Smoke, sparks shouting, guards scrambled, alarms blared, and through the chaos, someone emerged. Jay's jacket was scorched, his lip bleeding, and he carried a stolen plasma blade in one hand. "Get away from her," shouted. Tiale looked up in shock. "You shouldn't be here." "Neither should you," he said. Rushing to her, he slashed the neural restraints and helped her up. The elders were already summoning backup. But Tiali turned to the platform and lifted her hand. With effort, she channeled the old control code 1. Only a royal could access. The hive mirror froze, the lights dimmed. Then she broadcast. Her voice across the court's internal network. "To all Zelari," she said, "you have been told that love is a disease. That affection is weakness. That our ancestors were flawed. They weren't. They were alive." Jace stood beside her, sword ready. "I have touched a human. I have felt warmth, pain, longing. I do not deny it. I embrace it." The court above, the nobles, the servants, the guards paused as her voice echoed through every chamber. "And if that means exile, then I go willingly. But I will not be erased." The elders roared for silence. Guards charged. Jace grabbed her hand. "Time to go." They ran through the smoke-filled corridors, down through winding tunnels, past stunned guards and flickering lights. Some tried to stop them, but other Zelari soldiers stood back, uncertain. They had heard the princess speak like no one had in centuries, and some of them felt something. Stir too. They reached the hangar bay, where a single diplomatic shuttle sat idling. Jace fired up the engines. "You sure about this?" Tial nodded. "I can't go back. Then we go forward." As they lifted off, hive ships scrambled to intercept, but Tial activated the shuttle's ancient override beacon, another forgotten protocol. The blockade paused just long enough for them to break through the upper atmosphere. Stars opened up in every direction. She collapsed into the co-pilot's seat. Breathing hard, Jace reached across and took her hand. "No more running," he said. "No more hiding," she agreed. And somewhere far below, on the cold world of Zelari, a seed had been planted. Not of war, but of feeling. And it had already begun to grow. The stars drifted silently around the stolen diplomatic shuttle as it sailed across deep space, its hull still scorched from the escape. Inside, the lights flickered softly. The hum of the engines was steady, reassuring even. But inside the cockpit, everything was quiet. Princess Tiali sat with her arms folded tightly across her chest, her posture rigid. Not out of fear, but out of uncertainty. Her body was no longer reacting in predictable patterns. Her thoughts felt loose, stretched in directions the hive had never taught her to explore. Beside her, Jace piloted the shuttle with practiced calm. His jaw was bruised. A fresh cut traced the edge of his eyebrow. And still, he looked at her not with judgment, not with worry, but with something that unnerved her even more. Care, real, undeniable care. "You're quiet," he said softly. Tiali didn't answer right away. "I don't know how to be outside." "The hive," she finally said. "I feel like I've left half my mind behind." "You've kept the best half," he replied. "The part that's yours." She turned her face to him slowly. "And what do I do with it now?" He smiled faintly. "Shh. You start living." She looked away again, out the window, watching the streaks of light bend past them. "There's a small moon station ahead," Jace said. "Human-built, abandoned during the war. We can lay low there until we figure out our next move." Tial nodded but said nothing. They landed the shuttle without trouble. The station was ancient cracked walls, blinking lights, frost on the windows. Still breathable, still livable. Still theirs for the moment. Jace led the way through dark corridors, boots crunching softly on the old metal floor. Tiali followed, her steps light, almost soundless. Despite the station's age, it had a quiet beauty, hanging wires glowing dimly, floor lights blinking like old stars. There was a strange calm here. As if time itself had stopped, they found a control room and made camp. Later that night, they sat across from each other by a makeshift heater, wrapped in borrowed silence. Between them lay a ration, packed barely touched. Tioli kept glancing at Jace's hands, noticing the scars, the way his fingers moved when he spoke. It fascinated her how human bodies wore stories in plain sight. He broke the silence. "Do you regret leaving?" She looked up sharply. "No. Are you afraid?" "Yes. That's okay." He stood slowly and walked toward her, not too close, not fast. He knelt beside her, resting on one knee. "I can't pretend to know what this is for you," he said, "but I know what it is for me." She tilted her head. "And what is it?" He searched her face. "You changed me. I came here to negotiate peace. I never expected to meet someone who reminded me what it feels like to want peace, not for duty. For someone." Her breath hitched again. He reached up, slowly offering his hand. Not taking anything. Waiting. She didn't hesitate this time. Hand met his, small and trembling. "I thought feeling would make me weak," she whispered. "But it hasn't. It's made everything louder. Realer." Jace gently brought her hand to his chest, pressing it over his heart. "This," he said softly, "is where we carry the truth." Then ever so slowly, she leaned forward. It wasn't a rush, wasn't an accident. It was a choice. Their foreheads touched first, warm skin on warm skin. Her breathing deepened. His hand moved to the side of her face, again gentle, slow, reverent. She tilted her chin, and finally, their lips met. It was not perfect, it was not practiced, but it was pure electric. For her, it was a universe collapsing into one single point. Heat spread through her skin like solar flares. The hive would have called it a malfunction. She knew better now. It was her first moment of wholeness. Her fingers curled into his jacket. Her body trembled with waves of emotion she'd only ever read about in forbidden archives. And through that kiss she felt anchored, real, human in the best way possible. When they finally parted, her eyes stayed closed for a moment longer. She whispered, "Is this what love feels like?" Jace didn't answer with words. He simply pulled her into a quiet embrace, letting her rest against his chest, feeling the beat of something eternal. Behind her, the walls of the station flickered to life, responding to the emotional spike in her neural field. Ancient technology, long dormant, stirred in quiet recognition. Symbols she had never seen, began glowing on the far walls. Asterisk. An old language, Zalari, but older. She stood slowly, still holding Jace's hand. Her skin shimmered faintly, soft pulses of light glowing through the veins of her arms, her neck, her chest. "What's happening?" he asked gently. "I don't know," she whispered, looking down at her hands. "But I don't think it's bad." The station responded to her presence. Doors unlocked. A hidden room opened beyond the control deck. Inside it were scrolls, fragments, preserved data cores, histories of the old Zalari, the ones who had kissed, the ones who had loved, the ones the hive had buried. She stepped into the light. Something in her awakening, and Jace followed. Hand in hand, not as a diplomat, not as a human, but as the first person to help a forgotten soul remember what it meant to feel. Asterisk, the moon station was no longer dead. As the hours passed, ancient systems flickered back to life, powered not by circuits or commands, but by something older, something deeper. The walls lit up with soft gold threads of light, as if they recognized Princess Tial's presence. Her hands, now glowing faintly at the fingertips, responded to the old Zalari tech like a key unlocking forgotten memories. Jace stood beside her as she examined the chamber, eyes wide not with fear but wonder. Everything here had been hidden away: list scrolls, glowing crystalline tablets, recordings in the old tongue of her ancestors. They sat together in the archive room as a projection shimmered to life before them. Zalari female, one that looked shockingly similar to Tiali, stood in ceremonial armor, speaking in a language that hadn't been heard in centuries. The translation glyphs fluttered on the screen. "To love is not a weakness. It is the bond that holds the stars together. We kissed not to lose control, but to know who we were. They fear emotion because emotion cannot be ruled. And so they buried us." Tiali reached out and paused the recording. Her voice was quiet, heavy with realization. "My blood carries their legacy." Jace nodded. "And your heart proves it wasn't a flaw." Tiali turned to him, her silver blue eyes, once cold and unreadable, now held depth pain, yes, but also something stronger. Conviction. Conviction. "We need to go back," she said. Jace's brow furrowed. "Back to the royal court," she confirmed. "Not to surrender, but to show them the truth. To show them what they buried. And to give the others, those who feel but are too afraid, a choice." Jace sat back. "You know what that means? You'll be seen as a traitor, a rebel. They'll try to silence you." "Let them try," she said, rising to her feet. "The hive cannot erase what's already waking." 3 days later, the stolen diplomatic shuttle broke through the outer perimeter of Zalari airspace. Alert beacons rang across the orbital defenses. The royal fleet scrambled. Warships lined up with blinding blue cannons pointed at the intruder. Inside the shuttle, Tiali stood tall, dressed not in a princess's robe, but the ceremonial battle armor of the old Zalara, gold and silver bands, woven with glowing veins of memory metal, pulsing with living energy. A crown of light formed over her forehead, but not from power granted by the hive. This one rose from the old sigils encoded in her DNA, wakened by love. Jace flew beside her, gripping the controls. Calm, focused, ready. "They're going to board us," he said. "We won't make it to the court." "You don't need to," she replied. "You just need to be seen." She walked to the center console, activated the station's internal broadcast override meant only for royals. All of Zalari heard her voice. "To the people of Zalari, I am Princess Tiali, daughter of the royal hive, and rightful heir to the memory of those you were told to forget. I return not to demand the throne, but to return truth to a people who have been kept cold, empty, and controlled. They told you emotion is a virus, told you kissing is filth. They lied." Gasps echoed through the palace. The nobles froze in their chambers. Even the elders stared in disbelief as the broadcast displayed her alive, radiant with a human. At her side and glowing with the markings of the ancient bloodline once thought extinct, I have kissed, I have loved, and I did not break. I became whole. You don't have to kneel. You don't have to follow me. But you are free to feel again. A sudden tremor echoed through the city. It wasn't an attack. It was the hive. Link flickering some citizens, sensing the truth, were disconnecting voluntarily. The hive had never known resistance from within. But now, a spark had caught, and it was spreading. They never returned to the throne. Tiali chose a different path. She and Jace disappeared into the stars, leaving the royal court in chaos and the people in quiet awakening. But her message remained. The floating court became fractured. Some clung to the hive. Others began searching the old temples, rebuilding the rituals of emotion. A new movement rose called the Open Heart Accord. Its emblem was simple: 2 hands, one human, one Zalari, pressed palm to palm, no weapons. Number. Crowns. Just connection. And in the heart of that movement, legends spread of a silver-skinned woman who once laughed at the idea of kissing, till a human showed her what it really meant. She had no empire, no army, but her kiss had started a revolution. And it didn't end with a battle. It ended with a heartbeat, and a choice to never live cold again. Asterisk.